Cabin Sports Radio.
Here comes the siren. I want to go higher. Oh, my goodness. Batista with a drive. Deep left field. No doubt about it. Posey will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Oh, baby, for sure.
Cabin Sports Radio starts now.
Cabin Sports Radio back on the Cabin Radio airwaves for another week. Brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. Chrissie Kerrigan and Jesse Wheeler joining me in studio tonight. Going to talk some World Series. Going to talk some basketball, NWT, and Basketball Canada as Ron Yeung and Cole Marshall join us on the show today. And then some NHL season, the 10-game-in snapshot, all coming up on Cabin Sports Radio.
The CSR Podcast.
Cabin Sports Radio, yes, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. Joined in studio tonight, once again, by Mr. Jesse Wheeler and Miss Chrissie Kerrigan. How you both doing tonight?
Yeah, real good.
Yeah, real good?
Yeah, real good.
It me.
How about you there, bud?
It me.
It's
Just my gritty character. Always.
That's your gritty character?
I need to,
What does that mean?
gritty.
Gritty.
Capital G. Come on,
capital
Jesse.
G.
Get
Gritty.
Get it together.
Okay, but why is it your character? Well, what are you doing?
Does he not know about my obsession with gritty? Didn't we talk
we
about
talked
it?
about this.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I was thinking like gritty reboot, not the psychotic mascot.
No,
Reboot.
he is
Yeah.
beautiful.
He's pretty great.
He is beautiful.
Pretty great.
He is well-intentioned.
Well-intentioned. He asks for consent.
He,
He respects every. He does not ask for consent, but he does respect everybody's feelings.
Speaking of gritty, though, and this segues well into
Dark Knight?
obviously our major topic
Right.
for today. There is a player on the Dodgers that looks just like gritty.
Oh,
yes, yeah,
with the big red
yeah,
beard?
yeah,
The big
what's
red beard.
I can never remember his name though. I'm terrible.
I know, me either, but I just call him gritty. And that is what honestly keeps me engaged in
He's
watching
probably okay
baseball.
with it.
That's right, Justin
Yeah.
Turner.
There you go.
Justin
Yeah.
Turner.
Turner, huge guy. That guy, he's a huge guy for the Dodgers. I think before we continue, actually, I just want to say that I really love your intro. It's really well done.
Yeah, you like that?
Got some great calls on there,
Yeah.
including my favorite call of all time, which is like LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the bat flip.
Well, the bat flip's pretty good too, but that like Marv Albert on that one is just that's incredible. How much more can you encapsulate the dramatics of sports, the subjugation of war by saying with no regard for human life?
It's one of the greatest calls of all
It's
time.
incredible.
Without question.
So for the Dodgers, yeah, Justin Turner, big game guy for the last few years. We talked about last week about how their window has been huge. They've won 6 division titles. They've been to the last 2 World Series. This time they got a bit trounced.
Yeah.
That window is going to shrink very, very quickly. But I mean, like Clayton Kershaw, their number one guy, arguably one of the best pitchers of the last 50 years, comes up goose-egged in the World Series with an ERA of over 7. That's insane.
Now everyone was. I think most people were predicting Boston would win the World Series. I don't know, but I don't know if 5 games was a common
I
prediction.
said if they went up to, I had said this at work. I said if they went up 2-0, they would win it in 5 because I knew the Dodgers would pull out 1, and they did in that 18-inning game, the longest game in World Series history,
Hold
7
on.
hours 20 minutes long.
Also, my prediction technically was correct.
Which was what?
Boston in 6.
that,
and they
you
did.
could make
Play
that
6
argument.
games.
Within 6. Yeah,
So
that's true.
I'm just going to say I was right,
You were very right.
and that's enough.
I said I wanted the Dodgers to win, but I also said that the Sox would win.
Right.
Yeah, but I wanted the Dodgers to win. I think it's the better story. Boston's basically there are 2 somewhat dynasties in the last 15 years in baseball. San Francisco's won because they won 2010, 2011, and 2014. They won 3 titles in 5 years, which is incredibly hard to do. And the Red Sox, who have now won 4 in the last 14 years.
Yeah.
That's as close to a dynasty as you get.
And one of the
Yeah.
announcers last night was saying, there's a whole generation of kids that just can't even comprehend, fans of the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Whole generation, that
When they didn't win.
They can't even comprehend. They don't even understand.
Yeah.
They've just known the Red Sox as a winning organization.
They've
no
known them
idea.
as this good organization. Didn't know they had to go 85 years without winning anything. It's the same with the Cubs. Like the Cubs are in a window right now. They won a championship. they're still doing fairly well. I mean, they didn't do well this year,
Right.
comparatively. But I mean, yeah, there's a whole mess of people that are just like, yeah, they won the World Series. You didn't realize that they took 110 years to win one.
So here's a question for you: the Boston Red Sox. They were dominant all season long, all playoff long. Only lost all 3 games all postseason.
118 wins, regular season and playoffs combined.
Yeah, one of the losses of which was that 18 inning game, longest game in World Series history. Did you watch the full thing?
I did not watch the full thing at all. Was that Wednesday night?
It was Friday night.
Was Friday night?
Yeah.
Friday night. I can't remember what day it was.
Jesse's having a week.
The work weeks mean nothing to this guy.
I woke up this morning thinking it was Thursday. So, don't ask me about time or space or continuums.
But baseball.
Baseball is timeless. The Cubs just won. Anyway.
Yeah. I made it to the bottom of the 16th, and I was falling asleep.
It's nuts.
That's pretty
Nuts
good.
that it's
I watched the very first inning, took a significant break from watching,
went to work, came home,
went to a party,
slept.
Had a full day.
Yeah.
literally had a full evening of activities, looked up randomly at a TV screen and was like, oh, shit, this is still going
Are
on.
those highlights? No, this is still going on.
This is
They
happening.
played 2 games. They played 2 games.
I was saying to Chrissy before the show. So I was kind of loosely following the game through the evening, and just kind of assumed at some point late at night that the game was long since over, and happened to be watching SportsCenter, and whoever was anchoring it that night, she's like, and now this game has just become the longest game in World Series history. I was like, it's still on.
Still on.
Flip over to Sportsnet, and still going. I think it was like maybe the top of the 15th of that. So I made it through 2 innings and then fell asleep.
Has been called the greatest game of baseball ever played.
Has it?
It has been.
Wow.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I mean, it was an incredibly well-pitched game. So one of the Red Sox relievers, I believe, why can't I remember his name? I'm terrible. 6 innings of shutout relief work, which is the longest relief appearance in any game
Right.
in history. Most players used in a game in history.
Right.
Longest game in history. What else was it? I can't remember. I think most innings in history. It's nuts. And that's what we were talking about last week, is that's why baseball's so awesome. Like things like what they say about baseball is that you come to the park every day and you will see something you have never seen before.
Yeah.
And I think that's only true in baseball.
Well, yeah, and you see that reflected like every year, and there's always a record where it's like, this has only happened once in the last 76 years.
Yeah,
or something.
and because it has such a history, right? Because the major leagues have been around for like 130 years. You've got this incredibly long history to draw from. And that's why when you get into like inane statistics, baseball has the best ones. They've got the best statistics.
It's also the sport with the most downtime. So, like, they have to delve into those inane
Of course,
statistics to keep people engaged.
Absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, the analytics behind the scenes, if we're talking about, like, as managers and, like, GMs and then the people recruiting talent or developing talent or poaching talent or whatever, sure, like, those analytics almost look different.
Yeah.
But then the ones that they use for entertainment are, like, whatever. Like you were talking about last week.
Oh, I love it. I love those things.
Thursday in June.
Thursdays in June, when the temperature's below 30 degrees, the Blue Jays are not playing very well. But it's like that for any sport when you start talking about history.
Right.
When you start talking about like, the Canadians have a record of this going back to 1972. It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
The
Ultimately
game has changed
meaningless,
so much since then. It has no bearing on anything.
Well, if
But-
inane, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was
Chrissy.
just going to say, but watching sports without commentary is kind of boring. It's
you
weird,
couldn't-
right?
It's stupid.
couldn't do it.
Totally,
I mean,
I
I guess you
tried
do
the
it
other
live, but
Well, yeah, but you're drunk.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. I'm doing this myself. I gotta call this game.
you
But,
still
like,
got people who bring their little radio headsets to the games
I
live.
love that.
And,
my
yeah.
dad.
my dad was one of those.
Yeah, my dad bought me one of those too. I was like, "What the hell is this thing?" Because I was like 12, and he's like, "Put it on your ear, listen to the game." I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." Because it was like AM 540 in Toronto. But without commentary, have you ever watched like an Olympics? Because the Olympics are so protected by copyright and all this intellectual property.
We're
nonsense.
barely even allowed to say it right now.
I don't think we're allowed. Olympics. If you watch a highlight pack, say on YouTube or something like that are produced by the Olympics, it will have no commentary,
Right.
And it'll just be a package of highlights, and it's just like a goal, and like no one's saying anything, and it's just so weird. It's like, did something happen? All right.
So speaking of inane statistics, if we can have an inane statistic then lead to a rhetorical question for both of you.
Oh, perfect.
So we were talking about the Boston Red Sox, just dominant all season, dominant throughout the postseason.
Ridiculous.
Only the 13th team in Major League Baseball history to post the league's best record and go on to win the World Series.
That's why you play the games.
Is this the best Boston Red Sox team
Yes.
in history?
Yeah.
Is it the best baseball team in history?
No.
Okay.
But it is the best Boston Red Sox team in history. It's a franchise so storied, has been along for so long. This is the most wins they've ever had in the regular season. And then they went on and just crushed. Mm-hmm. They crushed. Like, they took out the Houston Astros, who are arguably the best team in baseball. Better than Boston, maybe not this year, but built better, and took them out in 5 games. Mm-hmm. Or 6 games. Was it 5 or 6 games in the ALCS? I
don't know.
Anyway, but they took out the Dodgers, who were built to win a championship. Have been built to win a championship. They are a $1 billion franchise. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think they're worth $2 billion. The Red Sox have, I think, the fourth highest salaries in the league, mm-hmm. at like $165 million or something like that. Yeah. It's just nuts.
You just lose track after.
Well, there's no salary cap. So put all those things together. That they built that team. They paid for some guys as well, just like any team would. But 108 wins was just the most they've ever had, and completely dominant through the playoffs. Yeah, it's the greatest Boston Red Sox team ever. Is it the best story? No, because the best story is 2004 when they came back from 3-0 on the Yankees.
Right. You were also pointing out this morning and having some fun with the fact that they were blasting New York.
Incredible. The biggest troll I've ever seen. The most shade you've ever seen thrown by another team is the Reds. They weren't even playing the Yankees for the World Series. They can't. They're in the same league, but still. So much shade that, like, they've gone through a completely different series, faced another foe, learned everything about this team, put 110% on the field against another team, to go back into that locker room and be like, yeah, we beat the Dodgers, but who cares? New York.
Let's troll the Yankees.
Amazing. And completely classless and gutless. Bunch of cowards.
All right, moving on, of course, the MLB postseason. Biggest Blue Jays fan I know, sitting right in front of me.
Not Gibbons?
Well, I don't know. Maybe you two will have to duke
he's
it
not
out
here
for,
right now, so I don't care.
Yeah,
I am the biggest fan.
You're the biggest Blue Jays fan in the vicinity.
In the room. Thank you for commenting on my size. That makes me feel nice.
Big offseason coming from the Blue Jays.
Yes.
What are you looking for? What does the team need, and what kind of moves are you expecting them to make?
I don't know that I'm expecting to make too many major moves in the offseason, because right now they've got one of the best farm systems in the league. They got Vladdy Guerrero Jr. Coming through the ranks. He's got to come up to the majors next year. This season coming. Bo Bichette, and then you've got Teoscar Hernandez, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. You've got all these kids, and that's how Houston built their team. They built it around these young guys. That's how sports is going. You can't just put in a bunch of 35-year-old vets and expect to win a championship anymore. You got to build it on 22 to 26-year-old guys who are fresh, who can get over injuries incredibly quickly and things like that.
Right.
So you've got this good mix right now of late 20s guys and guys in their early to mid 20s, and then you've got these 19 and 20-year-olds coming up. They need pitching. They need to make a move for another ace, because they dealt away J.A. Happ. But there is a possibility that J.A. Happ could come back. They need to make a move for that. I don't see them making a move for that this season, but I'm very excited about where they're heading. They're heading up. There's nowhere to go.
Do you think they're going to make? I mean, with them, so my understanding is that their salary cap is going to go down, or what they're spending on their players is going to go down this coming year.
They want to save some money.
So obviously prepping, for a few years in the future where they're probably going to want to drop some more money when they're actually contenders as opposed to rebuilding. So do you think that they're going to go out and they're going to spend that money on, one big starter, or do you think they're going to go hammered about middle relievers, kind of, nothing too big and splashy, but middle of the road?
Well, I think they need to make a splash. I mean, if they're getting serious about making a run, they need to make a splash in starting pitching. Relief pitching is going to be huge, because championship teams are built on relief pitching now. Because in the playoffs, even your best starter, if if there's any question, they used to do 7 or 8 innings. That's what you'd want from
six
each
now.
It's like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Right? So they're keeping him in there very, very short. So you have to have a good stable of good relief pitchers. So again, I don't think they're going to make a bunch of splashes this year. I think they're going to see how this team develops. Yeah, Rogers is going to save some money because they had a 3-year plan starting in 2011 that didn't pan out over 6 years. So, I mean,
It's like a Rogers phone plan.
pretty much exactly. But I mean, in 2012, when they made that deal for R.A. Dickey, and then they picked up Mark Burley and Josh Johnson and Jose Reyes, those moves put together by Alex Anthopoulos were called the one trade with the Marlins that brought over Josh Johnson, Jose Reyes, and Mark Burley was called arguably the greatest trade of all time, which is insane. Josh Johnson didn't work out. Jose Reyes was gone in a couple seasons, and Mark Burley anchored a pitching staff for a couple of years and was integral to their run in 2015. I don't see them making a big splash like that, but I do see them hopefully developing these new players. Like the new coach, Montoyo, is an analytics guy. Like he was the guy on the bench doing the analytics. So I expect to see some. I'm excited. I'm excited about the new team. Yeah. I don't think they're going to make a big splash, but I think they're nothing to go anywhere.
You think they're like going to slowly collect the pieces? Like they're setting the groundwork. Even in this offseason, they're setting the groundwork for years to come. So.
What I mentioned last year, like when Houston won the World Series, Sports Illustrated called them winning the World Series 3 years, almost to the day. On the cover, they were like, "This is your 2017 World Championship."
Right. Yeah.
No one's calling that for the Blue Jays because no one believes in the Blue Jays, but that's what they're kind of moving towards. Yeah. They've put pieces in place with a lot of really savvy moves. A lot of people get down on Shapiro and Atkins, but they built the Cleveland Indians. They built what almost won a World Series a couple times in a row. Mm-hmm. They built a team that, with some added pieces, won 22 games in a row last year. So they built an incredible team, and they're doing it again.
Do you think that, so this is kind of touching on some other sports as well, but, like in the NBA, going to Toronto, it's kind of seen as like a little bit of a purgatory if you're a player. Like you don't really want to go, like, no offense to those who are fans.
No, I just don't think it's that way anymore.
Are you sure? Really though? Like
I don't think
if you're some kid growing up in Houston and you're great, and you dream of going to Toronto and
I don't know that
the Toronto
you dream
Raptors?
of going to Toronto, but they've created a culture there that's incredibly, like, it sounds trite, but it is cool. It's cool to like the Raptors and be a Raptor.
If you're a Canadian,
I think that's a legit market. That's a legit market.
I'm just curious, and I'm curious if the Blue Jays have the same sort of feeling, because I mean it's the same thing for like Minnesota, players aren't getting drafted and going like, oh please Minnesota, they're not super stoked about it.
There absolutely is some of that going on, because there's a lot of factors obviously, and it goes into hockey as well. Yeah, I mean for Canadian kids, Toronto's something kind of big. I mean, but there's a lot of attention in Toronto, as there always is. There's a winter in Toronto. Canada's kind of got this reputation of being kind of boring when it comes to like what Americans think of Canada. I think they've, like, what Drake has done, which is odd to say, what a homebred Canadian Raptor has done for an NBA franchise and arguably Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, blah, 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 has brought in hundreds of millions of dollars.
You think he's getting a cut of that?
Oh, absolutely he's getting a cut of that. He has generated $600 million for the Toronto economy. There's no doubt in my mind he's getting a huge chunk of that. But he created something kind of cool, because Toronto for the longest time was seen as just kind of like a boring ass city. And I mean, I don't really particularly love Toronto, but they've created a good sports culture. Yeah. And I think there's another reason for people maybe not being super jazzed about Toronto is because the Sky Dome is terrible. You're playing on concrete. Right. Like, you know what, I mean, you know the field house, how it's just like a thin layer of AstroTurf on concrete. Right. That's what the Sky Dome is. Yeah.
They don't have that field turf down there?
They have the field turf, but it's still on concrete. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's tough. Yeah. It's tough to run on. It's tough to play on. It's not the most inspiring sight. Yeah. It used to be. Well, the first time I went there was 1991, and ironically enough, they were playing the Dodgers in a preseason game, and I was in awe of that place. Yeah. And my brother turned to me, he's like, they can fit the Parliament building in here, and I was like, oh my God, it was
the Parliament
building. That's crazy. And now it's just old. Like it opened in 1989 or 87 or something like that.
A tangent that just popped into my brain off of you saying that is that not this isn't true now, but it was at a time that the only professional sports that I had attended were for now defunct teams.
Yeah.
My first and only MLB game was the Expos in Montreal.
Oh, speaking of terrible stadiums.
My first and only NBA game was the Grizzlies in Vancouver.
So what you're saying is that you curse
Yes, that's what I'm
Canadian
saying.
franchises.
The Kerrigan curse.
The CCC, the Chrissie Kerrigan curse.
Yeah, more than a few of those floating around.
Ew. What? Are you
Get your mind out of the
talking
gutter,
about your
Jesse.
love life? Like, have you just
Who knows
left
what I'm talking
a
about?
trail of broken hearts and possible... Anyway.
Lastly, any shout outs or any hurt feelings to your former Blue Jays there who picked themselves up a World Series championship?
Not at all, man. I mean, that Price was picked up as a rental, right? You can't fault him for going to Boston.
Exercise some demons himself.
$10 million. Like, I mean, yeah, exercising some demons. Up to that point, he was for basically. He had a couple wins in relief as a starter. He's one of the best starters in the league in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Had a couple wins in relief in playoff appearances, and then comes in, wins 2 huge games. And then, of course, Steve Pearce, who started last year with the Blue Jays. Started this year with the Blue Jays with a strikeout and a pinch hit appearance against the Yankees. And then in the last game, he hits 2 home runs and wins the he wins the World Series MVP. Oh, and by the way, the Blue Jays paid more of his salary this year than the Red Sox did. Yay!
This is like there's a rom-com premise where there's a woman who every time she dates a guy and then they break up, the next person that guy dates becomes their wife. And the premise is that like she's always the one right before they settle down. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like what the Blue Jays are.
Yeah, kind of.
They're like a farm
anyway,
team for
sure.
actual legitimate contenders. Okay.
But even all this year, like Price was getting dogged on for not performing well, and he came out in the World Series and he crushed it. So, no hard feelings.
The Cabin Sports Radio Podcast, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward.
Welcome back to Cabin Sports Radio, joined in the studio by a couple basketball type people, one from a national perspective, one from a local perspective. Ron Yeung, manager of domestic development for Canada Basketball, joins us, as well as Cole Marshall, technical director of basketball NWT. How you doing today, gentlemen?
Good, Scott. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You sound thrilled, Cole. Here to talk about Junior NBA, which is up here in Yellowknife, a very young program. It's the second year, you were saying, correct, Cole?
Correct, yeah. Second year we've been running this.
Wanted to ask you, Ron, from a national perspective, Junior NBA, can you give us a little bit of insight about the history of this program?
Yeah, the Junior NBA program was developed 4 years ago, and pretty much from the get-go, the intention was to provide an opportunity for youth to play basketball. What Junior NBA has done is partner up with another program called Steve Nash Youth Basketball, which has been in the marketplace for about 10 years. So the two programs joined force to basically provide an opportunity for youth between the ages of 5 to 12 to play basketball across Canada. And the program has been very successful with the inception of the program in Canada with Steve Nash Youth Basketball. It incorporated over 20,000 kids currently playing, and then on top of that, with the Junior NBA program, it's another 7,000 kids. So altogether, we have probably close to about 30,000 kids playing the program across the country.
So you say this is it joined forces with the Steve Nash Youth Basketball League?
That's correct.
Okay, and that was around for how long before?
10 years.
10 years,
So the
okay.
Steve Nash Basketball program was a program developed through Canada Basketball, and again, it's the idea is to basically develop fundamental skills for young athletes to learn the game the right way. Very much similar to what the Junior NBA program was in terms of its delivery. At the time, about a couple years back, when Junior NBA was first developed, it was specifically a program that was developed for kids 5 to 7. And the Steve Nash Youth Basketball program was developed for kids 8 to 12 years old. So we see, the similarity in terms of the development aspect of it, and we've been talking about it for some time in terms of how we can partner up and how we can grow the program together through the marketing power of the NBA and sort of the technical expertise of Canada Basketball to really develop a program that is fun, enjoyable, and it's really got the legs to really grow the game across the country the right way.
How do you appeal the program to youth? What do you do that's different, and how do you continue to evolve that process of reaching out to kids and making the game as attractive as it can be?
I think there's a few different parts to it. From a youth standpoint, we always talk about teaching the game the right way, and the right way meaning that it has to be fun first. All too often, I think, when we talk about basketball practice and sessions and stuff like that, you think of like drills and, a lot of, doing repetition stuff. For us, it's really how do you develop a practice plan that is fun, that is engaging, get the kids to enjoy the game first and have fun with it, so that they can develop the confidence and the competence to really kind of, get to the next level. And so we develop a program that speaks directly to that. It's age and stage appropriate. It really focuses on teaching kids at different age groups. We have designed our curriculum to include a 5 to 7 curriculum, an 8 to 9-year-old curriculum, and then a 10 to 12-year-old curriculum, so that it's stage appropriate. So, again, when we first designed the program, the idea is that we want this to be one, fun, and two is there should be some type of consistency. A kid in the territories, should be doing the same thing as a kid in Toronto. A kid in Truro, Nova Scotia should be doing the same thing in Victoria, BC. So from an age and stage appropriate standpoint, we have developed a curriculum that really speaks to that and really speaks to what it means to learn basketball at the different stages.
What are some of the bigger challenges you've experienced in doing exactly that, marketing and maintaining a consistency to the program nationwide?
I think the challenge is still very much the buy-in. We have done a very good job in developing the program from a technical perspective. We have done a good job in terms of, building the various aspects of the curriculum to include character building and progression. We have done a good job in, development of the coaches through this program as well. But I think, all too often still very much, in the marketplace, there are still, programs out there that feels that they want to do their own thing. So the buy-in to kind of understand what it is to, teach basketball the right way, what it means to develop a fun and enjoyable basketball program first, as opposed to focusing on winning all the time. Those are all some of the barriers, I guess, for the time being. And I think for the most part, as time goes on, we are, educating more coaches. We are educating more administrators across the country, and we are getting the buy-in. So, it's a step at a time. The more people we can get in front of and talk to, the more we're able to, deliver our message and get that across to their mentality.
Speaking of basketball coaches and people who like to do things their own way, I'll turn to you now, Cole. From a local perspective, you're in the second year of the junior NBA program here in the NWT, which, I mean, as far as Northern time goes, that's pretty good. It's pretty much right on time if it's only been around for 4 years. How have you enjoyed the program so far, and how did you get involved with it?
So basically, I got approached by Canada Basketball to facilitate something here up north with the junior NBA, and I think the biggest appeal to me as a coach and also obviously with basketball and WT was that they made a really good point as to when kids generally have access to basketball. So that's kind of how I was sold. They kind of told us, most kids pick up a basketball and start to kind of play basketball around 9. And, by then, kids have already been playing soccer or hockey for 3, maybe 4 years. Right. So basketball wasn't exactly everyone's first love. And I think you can kind of tell the way the country is moving right now that basketball is becoming a lot more of an impact sport at a younger age. You see, obviously what we're doing at the Olympics and stuff like that. We're starting to compete at a higher level, back like we did with Steve Nash. But getting kids in younger, getting them, having an opportunity to touch a basketball at 5 years old as opposed to 9, that was a pretty big appeal for us. And we weren't really sure how it was going to work, so we did a trial run with Junior NBA, just the 5 to 7 year old division, obviously, last year here in Yellowknife. and I think we had 31 kids registered or 30 kids registered for the program. Was not difficult to fill those spots either. So we just decided let's keep going and let's continue to try and do this every year.
And you mentioned the changes you're seeing in the cultural identity shift from Canada just being hockey dominated to, in the last 10 years, you're seeing a real shift towards basketball, and Canada really kind of making its presence felt. And we were talking off the air before this interview started, Cole, and about how Steve Nash, for our generation, was unquestionably the biggest Canadian basketball star, and really kind of drew kids our age to the game. Who are the most marketable players now? Is there that same kind of marketability as a Steve Nash?
At the moment, maybe not quite. Obviously, I think in a couple of years you're going to see some very big names coming out of Canada. They've already made some noise. I think Ron might be able to answer this, but I think we're still the second most populated country or whatever.
I was actually gonna bring that up. So Canada, as it stands right now internationally, has the second most players, Canadian players in the NBA right now. More than France, more than Argentina, more than some of the traditional powerhouses. So it's a detriment to some of the work that Canada has done in growing the sport. When you look at role models, guys like Tristan Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Jamal Murray, Kelly Olynyk, to now, the next batch of players, are RJ Barrett, who is now playing in Duke, who will probably be the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft. We have an abundance of young talents coming out of Canada, and that really kind of, it creates an excitement for the sport in this country, and I think kids are now, looking up to that. You mentioned Steve, and Steve was a big part of that original kind of excitement. But now, as we continue year by year, we're seeing more Canadians in the game, and in the forefront of the most talented league in the world, in the NBA. It's really exciting to see all of that.
So then, from both a national, Ron, I'll ask you first from a national perspective. And I'll ask you, Cole, from a local perspective, what's the next step? Do you just, is it steady as she goes? Do you just kind of keep doing what you're doing and seeing how the development takes place? Or do you have some very specific steps in place for the future of junior NBA?
Junior NBA, so from our end, we are looking to continue to grow the program. We are looking to continue to ensure that the right teaching is in place. As much as we can put the cool stuff that every kid gets, a jersey and a basketball, it really comes down to the coaches. It really comes down to, the people on the ground who are making this happen for the youth in their community. So we are very focused on and emphasizing on creating that experience for the youth. So we put a lot of emphasis on creating the coaches' education piece, ensuring that coaches understand what it means to be coaching at this level. And we're providing those coach education pathway for all those coaches who have sort of a vision of higher level coaching and that type of stuff, so that we can essentially progress a coach as well. So a lot of what we talk about is not just on the athlete, but if we create an environment where we have good coaches in the system, then those athletes will grow. Those athletes will continue to get the excitement, they get the training and teaching from the coaches, and that will in turn help to build that broad base of athletes that will progress to the next level.
And Cole, locally, I know we've got yourself obviously included. We've got some really good people involved with basketball NWT. What do you see as the next step from here for the junior NBA and basketball and the NWT in general?
So we've seen a pretty big jump in community players being involved in sort of national championship teams, Arctic game teams, Western Canada games, so on and so forth. So we know that there are some very talented players in the communities. So we'll just continue to try and get the junior NBA started in as many communities as we can. Right now, I think this year we'll have 6 communities in total taking part. Obviously, Yellowknife will have Hay River, Inuvik, Norman Wells, Fort Smith, and Tuck. So, with community visits that I do for player development camps and such, it's nice because went to Norman Wells last year and went to Tuck last year. Now both of them are running junior NBA this year. So, when you're there, you try and talk up the right people and say, this is a program that's really working for us in Yellowknife. The kids are having a great time, and I think it would be something, if you guys are thinking long term as far as basketball, in your community, this would be something to start with. 5 to 7, 5 to 8, whatever you guys want to do. Canada Basketball does such a good job of providing programming that, yes, they're learning. They're absolutely learning, but the kids are having a blast. And yes, we have to make sure that we have the right coaches in place to put something together like that. I mean, I myself do the 5 to 7-year-old division. It might have something to do with the fact that my daughter is, that age. But you just have to make sure that you got the right people in place and that you're trying to offer the program in as many places as you can, and just try and sit back and help where you can, but just let these communities run them to the best of their abilities, and hope that if they need any help, you're right there to help them. But we just need to try and pump it out to more communities if we can.
Awesome. Ron, I know you probably already know this, but I can confirm for you again that you have as Cole was saying, putting the right people in the right places. You got a really good guy in the right place here in the NWT. And
I know. I'm pushing him hard.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Ron. Very much appreciated. And good luck with all your hard work as well with the junior NBA program moving forward.
I appreciate it, Scott.
All right. And thanks for joining me, Cole. And you keep doing all the hard work I know you're doing here in Yellowknife and the NWT.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, guys.
Take
we
care.
will be back on Cabin Sports Radio.
The CSR Podcast.
Welcome back to Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. The NHL season is approximately 10 games in. Most teams have played about 10. I think there's 1 or 2 who have played 9 and a few who have played like 11 or 12. But, as you know, traditionally,
Yes.
the 10-game in snapshot is a semi-accurate representation of what teams are going to be in the playoffs this year.
Woo.
So I thought we would do a little rundown of that.
Yes. Speaking of semis, my Habs are doing great.
They're in the playoffs as of right now. Yes, moving down the East Conference, the Atlantic Division, Toronto Maple Leafs sitting in top spot, the Tampa Bay Lightning finishing in second place, Montreal Canadiens finishing in third, and the Boston Bruins in fourth place. Metropolitan Division, Pittsburgh Penguins, Carolina Hurricanes, Columbus Blue Jackets, and either the Buffalo Sabres or Washington Capitals. It felt weird leaving the Capitals out of it because, I mean,
What's their record right now? They're not doing that well?
They're I think, like hovering around 500-ish.
No, whatever. They're going to make the playoffs.
What are
they not?
They're 5-3-2 right now.
Ugh.
So not an awful start, but a bit of a slow start. But I mean, they had the most epic Stanley Cup party in the history of the NHL.
They're still recovering.
They are still recovering.
They broke the Stanley Cup a couple of times.
I mean, we always gave Pittsburgh that grace period. Every time they win the Stanley Cup, they take them the first month of the season off, and then they start playing, and they make the playoffs every year. So I feel like we should afford the Washington Capitals the same kind of grace. Plus, they're battling with the Buffalo Sabres. I think we can reasonably say the Washington Capitals are going to win that battle.
I suppose you could. Yeah.
Moving on to the West, the Central Division, Nashville Predators once again finishing in top spot. Colorado Avalanche finishing in second place in the Central Division. Winnipeg Jets in third, and Chicago Blackhawks in fourth. And in the Pacific Division, San Jose Sharks finishing first. The Edmonton Oilers finishing second. Vancouver Canucks, big surprise, finishing third place. And the Minnesota Wild crossing over from the Central Division to finish fourth in the Pacific Division. And there you have it. There's the playoffs this year.
Well, I guess that conversation's over.
Should be fun.
10 games, is that traditionally when they let rookies know what they're doing with them? Is it 10 games in?
There's kind of a couple different parts of the season, and it affects kind of how the contract is handled after that. I don't remember all the stipulations, but there's like a 13 game one, or a 12 to 13 game, and then like a 40 game.
Oh yeah, that's
cutoff point.
Yeah.
And then of course the December 1st restricted free agent signing. deadline where if you don't have a restricted free agent signed, then he is out of commission for the rest of the season.
Yes.
And the Leafs, of course, find themselves inching closer and closer and closer to that with William Nylander. But they're in the playoffs, so it doesn't matter.
Don't sign him. Whatever. Don't even bother.
Your Montreal Canadiens
Looking pretty good.
off to a pretty surprising and good start.
14
6-2. 6-2-2 in their first 10 games of the season. 33 goals for.
Woo.
25 goals against.
Not bad.
That is pretty respectable.
It's one of the, well, it's like, what is it? Like 6th in the league for goal differential. That's not bad.
What do you think of your Habs so far?
So far, so good. I'm playing with a lot of confidence, no expectations, right? So that's a huge place to play from, much like the Golden Knights last year, playing from with no expectations,
Right.
and obviously exceeding any expectation that they would have had, but even exceeding the most lofty of projections.
And the complete opposite of the Habs last year.
yes, well, the Habs started off okay last year, and then just completely got destroyed.
They did, but they had expectations,
Of course.
looming all over them.
2014 was the year. Since then, it's been a pretty mixed bag. 2014 was the year. I'm still bitter about it because Kreider took out Price in the first game, and there we go. Dustin Tokarski stole 2 games of that series. Can you imagine if Price was in that series? They would have went on to face the Kings and
lost in the Stanley Cup final.
No, they probably would have.
The Kings having a surprisingly awful start.
Is that a surprise? They didn't make the playoffs last year.
I mean, they didn't make the playoffs, but they signed Ilya Kovalchuk. That
No one cares about that.
Well, I mean, that was expected to inject some offense.
36 years.
Anze Kopitar came off his, I think, the best season of his career last year.
That's true.
Drew Doughty just re-signed with the team. You know, Jonathan Quick's still at the top of his game. I expected them to at least be hovering around a playoff spot, but they are right now sitting in the basement of the Pacific Division.
They're dead.
3-7-1.
Not great.
To start the season.
What is the biggest surprise of the year for you?
I would have to say the awful start of the Kings so far. Minus 17 goal differential.
That's
too,
true.
for a team that is built on defense and goaltending.
Not the Knights?
I mean,
5-5?
They were more of a surprise last year. This is where I think we all expected them to be last year.
But they have basically the same team.
They do, but maybe they've come back down to earth.
Well, and they brought in Pacioretty and Stasny, right?
Yeah. I mean, they only added.
Well,
the
I mean,
roster,
here's the thing though. Pacioretty leaves the Canadiens, and right now they are playing with a lot of confidence, a lot of vigor that wasn't there last year. I don't know that Patches is a good locker room guy. I think that was the big issue.
Well, he certainly
didn't get along with Subban, and that was a terrible decision.
Did he not get along with PK Subban? Was that what that was?
That's what I heard.
Okay,
that's what I heard.
I thought that was more kind of the head office didn't like.
They didn't like the head office. Definitely didn't like Subban. No, Montreal cannot have a player that's bigger than the team,
right?
And he was building a brand that was bigger than the team. He was hugely popular, and for some reason that's the way they feel. Also, Quebec is like the most racist place on earth, so whatever.
That never helps.
No. And you know what? I will not take that back. It's not the most racist place, but I don't know. It's just, they're not proving themselves great right now with their elected government.
Well, and I mean, even if you just want to stick to hockey, it's the toughest place to play.
I don't want to stick to hockey. I want to talk about racism. It is absolutely the toughest place to play. I mean, there's nowhere to hide.
No.
One of the best stories was when Dale Weiss played for them, and he came over from Vancouver. And he was saying it's amazing playing here because I get recognized on the street. I love it. It's really heartening to have fans like come up to you like you're a fourth line guy, but they know who you are immediately.
Right.
He talked about leaving Rogers Arena in Vancouver, being in the elevator with fans, and no one knowing who the heck he was. But that's Vancouver. Vancouver's probably the worst fan base for anything ever. So.
I mean, in their defense, too.
No defending Vancouver.
Dale Weiss really did strike you as just a blue collar kind of.
Absolutely.
He looks more like an electrician than a hockey player.
That's true.
I mean, he's a Winnipeg boy.
What do electricians look like, Scott?
Mennonites. So there you have it.
Absolutely. No, the Mennonites are world renowned for their work with electricity.
We're really covering a lot in today's show.
Really
Racism, religion. We're just hitting all the hard topics.
Check him all those boxes.
It's okay. I have a Mennonite background. I'm allowed to make that joke.
Oh,
I've
got friends that are Mennonites, so it's totally fine.
I also have friends who are racist, so I'm allowed to say whatever I want.
That's right. All right. I figure we'll end tonight's episode of Cabin Sports Radio on a light note.
That wasn't light. It's really heavy.
I'm going to end it on the note coming up is going to be
He's going to
light.
shut our mics off again.
Okay, yes, that's exactly the case.
Just like at the start.
Put together a collection of thanks to MLB.com. They put out and some audio of some video, but I took the audio because it's radio of different calls. The final call of this World Series Game 5. We got some Spanish, couple cuts in Spanish,
nice
cuts in Korean, some Japanese, and some French. So in case you got bored of boring old English broadcasting. Yes. Go ahead.
I was going to say that the fact that you did this very cool. There is one of these for Sidney Crosby's Golden Goal.
Oh,
so like all the broadcasters that were broadcasting the Olympics, there was 10 of them. So there's that video too. So if you like this, go check out that video too.
All right. Have a great week. We will talk to you again next Monday on Cabin Sports Radio.
Thanks, bud. Sail para el home. Strike! ¡Hey, puro vientos! Los Boston Red Sox, campeones del 2018. Arranca la fiesta, celebrando el mejor equipo del mundo. Los Boston Red Sox del 2018.
Pero con los Dodgers ha fallado. El lanzamiento viene, él le tira, se poncha y así concluye, amables amigos, la campaña de béisbol del año 2018. Ha muerto el rey, viva el rey. Las Medias Rojas de Boston, muy merecidamente, se coronan campeones absolutos del béisbol de las Grandes Ligas.
원앤투에서 헛스윙 삼진호 경기 끝 5년 만입니다. 2000년도 네 번째 우승 21세기 최강팀 보스턴 레드삭스가 커미셔너 트로피를 차지합니다.三振 3아웃 시합終了. 보스턴 레드삭스 5년ぶり 월드 챔피언.
Viene por la gloria para Boston y la tiene. Le tiró y se planchó. Boston, cuarto título en el siglo XXI, hoy ganó. ¡Swing, abanica! Termina el partido, victoria. Los Medias Rojas de Boston nuevamente en la cima del béisbol.